Hey there, it's Jim, Vinyl Designs. So I'm gonna do a vinyl finds. No idea what number this is. It's early in the numbers, 2, 3, something like that. And I've got a little stack here. I'll try and go through at a reasonable pace so that this doesn't seem too long. The first record that I found, all of these are, pretty reasonably priced. The first one was a surprise because as far as I can tell, it's a first pressing. And the vinyl was in beautiful shape. The cover has a little bit of edge wear, but it's Maggot Brain by Funkadelic. This is such a great record, and probably most of you out there know that, but I was really surprised to find it for $15 at my local record store. It's got the gatefold, and I'm not much of a collector, so I don't know pressings and all of that, but as far as I can tell, this is a first pressing, or at least a very early pressing. And great shape. Plays great. Such a great record. So, yay. I did not expect to find that. I had actually thought I would just end up finding a repress at some point and picking that up that way. But that was a treat. So I'm not going to go too much into the record because, what do you say? It's Funkadelic. Great stuff. The next one is Boomtown Rats, Fine Art of Surfacing. If you don't know this record, you probably know at least I Don't Like Mondays, which was kind of the Boomtown Rats' big hit. It's probably the only song that they're really known for. They had a few other hits, but not so much here. Really good record. Kind of early, I guess you'd call Boomtown Rats punk in their early days. They were kind of part of that scene, but they kind of folded into what everybody calls post-punk and that whole scene. Good record though. Next one is Misfits' second, Earth AD, Wolf's Blood. I think this is considered an LP, but it's like 20 minutes long. It's like, it really is an EP in length, but there's like 8 or 9 songs on it. So I think they call it an LP, but very quick songs. All the songs are fast and short. So I guess it's an LP. But this is really, this was the last record that Glenn Danzig played on. I think he was just on the first 2 before going off to do Samhain and then Danzig. If you don't know the Misfits, kind of transitioning from into the sort of punk to hardcore, to sort of metal. They're one of those great bands that they're hard to define exactly where they fit in a genre. Those are always my favorites because I've always said that a great band is always a genre of one. So I think Misfits definitely fit that definition as much as any great band. So the next record is the 3 o'clock 16 Tambourines. the 3 O'Clock was a Paisley Underground band from the early 80s. They started out as a band called the Salvation Army. And I saw them, I don't know, I saw Salvation Army and then I saw the 3 O'Clock. They had a great sound. They were a fun, real kind of jangly pop band. This had a track on it that got a little bit of radio play called Jet Fighter. But if you're interested in anything that's jangle pop or Paisley, sort of neo psychedelia, these guys were great. There was this great scene out of LA in the early 80s that had a bunch of different bands that were doing this, and it's kind of a scene that Prince picked up on and ended up making his Paisley Park record, and but that all came out of this scene rather than that scene came out of that. So it definitely had an effect, but that was years later by the time Prince had kind of joined into that. Yeah, it's a good find. This is a record, Tears for Fears, The Hurting, that I think I had it on cassette. I probably, taped somebody else's record. Because I remember listening to it a bunch when I was a teenager, and it was a really good record. I never technically owned it, but I knew every song when I picked this up and listened to it. And what's really funny is that as I listen to this record, it sounds like I'm listening to a greatest hits record, because every single track is really well made, like well crafted, really polished, stands on its own. It's a better record than I remembered, and yet I remembered a lot about it. And I don't think I've listened to this since probably 1985 or something like that. So 34 years. But I'm glad I picked it up, and I'm glad that I listened to it again, and I will listen to it more because it's a pretty great record. Probably at the time I would have just thought of it as hey, it's a good record. I listened to it a few times, and I probably wouldn't have given it too much thought then. So the next thing is a record by a band that kind of does the opposite of what the Tears for Fears record did, which is, 30 years later, I listen to it and I think, wow, that really stands up and holds up over time. This is a band called The Alarm. I don't know how many people listen to The Alarm these days, but I wish I could say that they held up as well as some other bands, but they really kind of haven't. This record, this is their first EP, and their first album. Both of those they're good. They have a very distinctive sound. They were kind of trying to, everybody says when they talk about The Alarm that they're kind of a U2 ripoff band. I didn't really think of them that way, but they really had this spirit that U2 had, which is this sort of overly earnest, big kind of anthem sound that they were going after, and they were definitely trying to kind of, and you can see it on the record here, trying to do this sort of almost militaristic kind of approach to it, like that they were a bunch of revolutionaries. So sort of coming out of the kind of trying to marry the kind of Clash sensibility with the U2 sensibility, and I'm not sure that really holds up, at least what they were doing. I'm glad that I went back and listened to it, but I probably won't be replacing all my Alarm records. Next is Hoodoo Gurus. This is Stone Age Romeos. This came out in mid-80s, 84, 85, somewhere right around there. And I remember seeing them back then, and just, they were awesome. They were really an amazing live band. Really, really fun. How do you describe their music? Sort of garage rock, jangle pop, I don't know. Definitely kind of, yeah, that's probably as close as I can get to it. Great songs on here. It's sort of, I mean, you know, in the sort of garage rock vein of, you know, the Cramps, not as sort of punk as the Cramps version of that is, but still in that world. You know, songs like Dig It Up and I Want You Back. Great songs. You know, when they try and do more of the, I don't know, ballad kind of songs, I love their take on it, you know, like Zanzibar, because it just doesn't feel, it feels so sappy that it's almost tongue-in-cheek, and it's fun. And if you don't know Hoodoo Gurus, check them out. Yeah, that's the first record of theirs that I replaced, and hopefully I'll be able to come across quite a few more, because they're ones that I'd like to replace. Art of Noise, Invisible Silence, Invisible Silence. Just trying to kind of drop in all the Art of Noise that I can find. They seem to be showing up, you know, on a fairly regular basis, which is nice, because good records. I love their take on both electronica and their use of experimental instrumentation. Their production was great. You know, I listened to a lot of Art of Noise, YMO, lots of bands from that era. You know, Kraftwerk was a little bit earlier, but that were playing around with sort of pop from the perspective of kind of disassembling the structure and the music and the instrumentation, and that was interesting to me, because, you know, the radio pop in the 80s was awful, and so it was always nice to see somebody kind of take it apart and put it back together in a different way, and that made it interesting. Speaking of, Laurie Anderson, Mr. Heartbreak. This is actually a record I didn't have back in the 80s, so and I haven't listened to it since I picked it up. But I'm looking forward to it because I like Laurie Anderson, and I knew, you know, Excellent Birds and a couple other songs on here, but I just never picked this record up before, so looking forward to that one. Passion Fodder. I haven't heard anybody mention this band actually ever. I don't think I heard anybody mention this band when I listened to them back in the 80s. And it's a good record. This is Passion Fodder. Fat Tuesday is the name of the record. how do I describe their sound? They have kind of there's a bit of a sort of world music, which is kind of a generic term to them. I don't know that this is the case, but I always assumed that there was a Spanish influence to them. Maybe it's just because the first song is called Luz Blanca. But they had a very sort of art house kind of sensibility to them in their kind of pop, a little bit of a gothic kind of take to them, but kind of off kilter. Interesting stuff, worth checking out. That first record was great. I don't know if they ever actually made another record. That was the only one I ever had. It's the only one I've come across since. And they may have more. I don't know. So I've just got a couple more. Finally up to the 90s. I've noticed in trying to buy records again that the 90s are a really tough decade to get a hold of anything on vinyl. Seems like that was when the production really dropped down to nothing because of CDs. And then by the early 2000s, they started to show back up again, I think, because people were sort of focusing on the specialty markets. But anything between like 92 and 2005 seems to be pretty tough to get a hold of. You all probably already know this, but it's news to me. But I came across this, which is Gomez's first record. And this is a newer release. I think this just came out in the last couple of years. So it's a newer pressing at least. I don't know that the first record came out on vinyl. I didn't check. I had it on CD, but it was nice to come across this. I'm a big fan of Gomez, love their sound. Just really like it, the sort of roots, blues, rock sensibility that they have. Great voices, great guitar. I haven't seen the band perform, but we saw Ian Ball perform at a tiny little winery up here. There was maybe 30 of us sitting around, and we basically watching him get drunk and play, which was fun. Interesting side note, the opening act for Ian Ball at that show was a young woman named Sarah Bareilles, who apparently has gone on to bigger things. But yeah, it was like just a few of us. There was like nobody there, and that was kind of funny to see. So I can actually say I've seen Sarah Bareilles live, who is not someone I would ever go see. I think she's a phenomenal singer. It's just not my music, I guess. Yeah, she was great. Really great performer, great voice. Ian Ball was drunk. I don't know how else to put it. He was fun though. This is a great record, though I think that they got better as they went on. The second, third records, I think, are better than the first record. I think that this one was a little not quite fully formed yet. I think that they were still finding their sound, and they went on to bigger and better things later on. And then another very 90s record from Radiohead, OK Computer. Came across all of these. I came across, they were all priced well, and it was nice to find them. I don't probably need to tell anybody about Radiohead or how good OK Computer is, but it was great to find this. I think this is just on traditional black vinyl, and great record. So I think I'm going to wrap up this video and thank you for taking the time to watch this. And if you haven't subscribed, go ahead and subscribe. And I'll do more again as I keep building this pile of records here. I'll keep telling you about it. I should mention that one of the reasons why I don't do this as often as I would like is since we're rebuilding the house, that takes a lot of time. It's an overwhelming undertaking, plus a day job, a 9 to 5, and then for the house, I'm also doing this other thing where I'm building all the furniture for the house, and I'm new to woodworking, and so that's a big undertaking and a lot of time. And the reason why I'm bringing that up is because it does kind of feed back into this community. The speakers behind me were one of the first projects that I took on to kind of build my own speakers, and I'll build my own media center, I guess, when the time comes. What I have here is not something I built, but the speakers, I'll show those to you as well, if anybody's interested. Anyways, thank you, take care, and we'll see you soon.